What's going on, guys? Fishing with Bassquatch here, and welcome back to another video. Today's going to be the start of our tutorial series where you guys are going to learn different things about fishing, fishing rods, reels, all that jazz. You're going to learn it all here. Today, specifically, we're going to go from square one. We're going to start talking about rods and, how to choose the right rod for you. I'll show you guys a couple of mine as examples after we go through everything. We'll talk about rod length. That's one of the most obvious factors when choosing a rod. So when you're choosing a rod, there are going to be some outliers here, but most rods are going to come between 4 feet and 14 feet long. And each length has their own purpose. Everything I'm going to explain to you is going to come down to a matter of preference, so don't take my word for what's set in stone. But here, it's going to be a pretty good outline on how you guys can use what I teach you to maybe select the right rod for you. So the simplest thing to remember, or the simplest way to remember what rod length means when choosing a rod. The longer the rod, the longer you're going to be able to cast, but it's going to be harder to navigate, whether that means you're waiting or you're just trying to make accurate, precise casts. Your situation and the lures you're throwing are going to be a huge factor in deciding which one's going to work for you. As an example, if you're fishing in a kayak, you may not necessarily want the longer rods to get a longer cast, but you want it to be precise. You want a shorter rod length. But let's say, for instance, you're bank fishing, right? And you're just throwing a bait out there to a general direction. You're going to want those long rods to be able to make a longer cast in a general area, so it doesn't have to be precise. So a longer rod would fit. For most beginners, a 7-foot rod is a pretty good starting point. Some of my rods, in fact, most of my rods are right around the 7-foot length. We're going to talk about the action of a rod. The action of the rod is going to tell you where a rod flexes and how much it's going to flex. The action is also going to tell you how long it takes for the rod to go from fully loaded, which means fully bent when you're making a cast, back to its original position. Action is going to be categorized in 3 different ways: in fast, medium, and slow. Fast action rods are going to bend right below the tip of the rod, so there's not much flex in it. What that means is it's going to be very sensitive because it's got a huge backbone, doesn't really bend all that much. Having a strong backbone means you're going to be able to pull fish out of heavy cover a lot simpler. It's going to also snap back very, very quickly, which means you're going to have a way easier time getting a hook set on a fish if you need a powerful hook set. So your fast action rods are going to work best with a single hook or for precise jigging. So if you're just throwing a drop shot, your fast action rods are going to work great. It's going to be ideal for the larger fish. Doesn't mean you can't use the other rods for other fish, but for the larger fish, your best choice probably would be a fast action rod. Now the next one we're going to talk about is your medium action rod. What that means is it's going to bend halfway from the top of the rod or the rod tip. It's still more sensitive than a slow action rod, but not quite as sensitive as a fast action rod. With the medium action rods, you're still going to get a good hook set, not as powerful as you're going to get with a fast action rod, and you're still going to get some decent casting distance. It's not going to be nearly as good of a casting distance as your slow action rod. The medium action rods is going to be ideal for multiple hook setups, multiple hook rigs, like a trout rig that has 2 hooks on it. You're going to have a way better time with the medium action rod because it gives fish more time to actually eat the hook. And then this last one is going to be the slow action rods. It's going to bend all the way through the rod from the tip all the way to the butt end of the rod. What that means for anybody purchasing the slow action rod, it's going to be a really, really fun rod to use if you're fishing for smaller fish, such as, panfish or, trout from a creek. It has the most impressive casting you'll see in any of the rod actions. With it flexing the entire length of the rod, it's going to be like a slingshot when you cast those guys out. It's going to go a massive distance. An important thing to remember when looking at slow action rods, you have to match the lure to the size of the rod. I guess in a sense you want to try to use the smallest lure possible that would still achieve a good cast. Simply because slower rods need more time to actually lodge the hooks in the fish's mouth. That's why a lot of people who are using slow action rods are going to be using treble hooks, because it requires a lot less pressure to get a treble hook through the fish's mouth. The slow action rods are also going to be ideal for fast moving lures, such as your spinner baits and your rattle baits. Even though hook setting is more difficult, once the hook is actually set with the slow action rod, it's going to be a lot easier to maintain that tension in order to land those fish. So now that we've covered the length and the action of the rod, the next thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is the power of the rod. In a sense, Power of the rod is the capability to withstand pressure. For instance, heavier rods with heavier fish, lighter rods with lighter fish. The same thing goes with the line. The heavier your rod, the heavier the line you're going to use. All of that's going to be marked on your rods when you purchase it. I'll show you guys on my rods the writing that's on there. But the rods do tell you, ideally, what sort of line that you want to throw on those guys. If you don't follow those guidelines, you run into a few different issues. If your line is too light for the rod you're using, the line's going to snap. However, if you're using line that's too heavy for your rod, the opposite can happen and your rod can actually snap from having too heavy of a line on there. Doesn't mean it will, but it could. So rod powers come in ultralight, light, medium, medium heavy, heavy, and even ultra heavy. Keep in mind when you're purchasing a rod, offshore and bass are going to be different. A heavy offshore rod is not going to be the same as a heavy bass rod. You can't take your heavy bass rod and go out and expect to catch the same fish your heavy offshore rod will. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the power of your rod as well. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the material of the rods: fiberglass, graphite, and composite. We'll start off with fiberglass. Obviously, fiberglass is very strong, easier to make, which makes it more affordable as well. It's a really good rod for beginners. It does give you limited feedback, so you're not going to get as much sensitivity out of a fiberglass rod as you would, say, a graphite rod. And also, they are very heavy. If you're anything like me, I walk a whole lot around the lakes, or sometimes I go on a hiking trail, and if I find a creek while I'm fishing, it's not going to be very fun if I'm lugging around a big old heavy rod as well. So that's something to keep in mind. But you do get the durability from fiberglass. Now with graphite, graphite are your lighter rods. They dictate the graphite in a rod with IM6, IM7, or IM8. I'm not going to make that too complicated. Essentially what those are is the higher the number, the stiffer the material. However, don't get that confused. It doesn't mean that the higher the number, the stiffer the rod. It just means like an IM8, for example, is going to be stiffer material than the IM6, which means they can use less of it. It makes it lighter weight, but it's still just as stiff as an IM6. If you're looking for lighter weight, the higher the number. The nice thing about graphite, they're very, very sensitive. One downfall is they can be a lot more brittle. If you're making a cast and you don't see what's above you and there's a tree limb, if you hit it hard enough, you can shatter your rod. And trust me, it's not a fun time. I'm fortunate I haven't done it, but I've been with people who have completely broken their rods, and it doesn't make a good time for anybody. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You have to be quite a bit more careful with a graphite rod. Are more expensive, but I mean, you kind of get what you pay for. The last one's going to be composite. Composite rods are kind of the love child of a fiberglass and a graphite rod. You're going to have the flexibility. They're not heavy rods, and they're still sensitive. So they're great for if you're fishing varieties of water. Like you're not strictly a lake fisherman or a pond fisherman. You can take your composite rods and fish a huge variety of waters, and it'll handle just fine. The one thing with the composite, they are the most expensive rods out there. So if you're fishing on a budget, composite rods are not going to be your thing. Obviously, rods are going to have handles. It's kind of hard to grip a rod without a handle on there, but there's really two popular kinds of rods. You're going to have your cork handle, and then you're going to have your EVA foam. Cork, they're more comfortable to hold, and if you're, I'm originally from Colorado. If you're fishing in the cold, the cork handles are actually going to be warmer than your EVA foam. Cork might be the way you want to go. However, something to keep in mind, they're not very durable. If you're dropping your rod a whole lot, that cork can and probably will break, and they're harder to clean. You kind of have to clean the cork a lot in order to prevent it from breaking, but if you don't like to clean your stuff a whole lot, cork might not be, your cup of tea. The thing I like about cork rods is they actually are more sensitive than EVA foam, up to 3 times more sensitive. And I'm a huge finesse fisherman, so I kind of need that sensitivity to feel everything that's going on. It's more expensive for the cork, but it goes right back into you get what you pay for, With the handles, comfort's a huge thing. Now, EVA foam, that's going to be, I guess, your traditional foam handles. They are cleaner, so if you don't want to be mucking around with your rods and handles and keeping it clean all the time, you just kind of want to fish and then go home. EVA foam might be your thing. They're not nearly as comfortable. There's really no heat factor to them, so if you're fishing in cold weather, holding that handle is not going to help out at all. But they are cheaper. So outside of the handle materials, you also have handle shapes. Those can kind of vary as well, but the two most popular that I've seen, you have your pistol handle, which is going to be, it's a shorter handle, but it's got a little hook for your index finger on there. The nice thing with pistol handles is you get much higher casting accuracy and precise jigging. Again, it goes right back into, it depends on how you prefer to fish. But if you need very, very precise movements while you're jigging, the pistol handles are going to be the way you want to go. You also have your trigger stick. The trigger stick is going to be a longer handle. You can still throw with one hand, but you're going to be able to throw with two hands if you prefer casting with two hands. So that means you're going to get way further casting with the trigger stick. And the other nice thing about the trigger stick is since you can use two hands on it. Sorry, I keep looking at mine because I've got one of each, so I'm trying to make sure I actually brought the right rods out. But it's going to be better for battling larger fish. That trigger stick can make it a lot easier to fight those, the larger fish, especially for an extended period of time. All right, so that was pretty much a crash course. So I guess it's time to show you guys my rods. My fishing rods. I'm going to show you guys my fishing rods. Alright, so this first rod I got here is the Berkley Lightning Rod. It's one of the first rods that I ever bought. But I will show you guys, these rods have writing on it. I'm going to get my face out of the way and try to make this less blurry here. It's not really working. But you'll see writing on the rods. I'll tell you what mine says and then explain to you what all these letters and whatnot mean. So it starts off with BSLR. That's the Berkley Lightning Rod. And then the first three numbers on there, mine in particular says 701. That means it's a 7 foot, so that's a 70, and then the 1, that's how many pieces it is. So sometimes you'll see like a 682, and that's a 6 foot 8 2-piece rod. The first two numbers are foot and inches, and then the second number is going to be how many pieces that rod is. And the next thing it says is medium. So it is a medium action rod. I almost just hooked myself. I'm stuck in my pants. Hey guys. The next thing on here says lure 1/4 to 5/8 ounce. That means it's ideal for throwing lures between 1/4 ounce and 5/8 ounces. And the last thing it says is line 8 to 14 pounds. This lightning rod that I have is ideal for 8-pound to 14-pound line. I have a different reel I threw on this guy. We're not talking about reels today though. We're just talking about rods. And then the last thing on here, I think it's just a manufacturer code. It's nothing that I know. It's maybe you guys do in the comments section. So you let me know. It says 01K19BI. Yep. That's what it says on there. Then the handle I have on this guy is that pistol stick. It's a cork handle here. I like the sensitivity that it has in this. Get plenty of sensitivity in this guy. So a lot of times when you're fishing, just pick up the rod, feel how the sensitivity is. Maybe have a friend go and, do something with the other end of the rod and see if you could feel it. But this is one of my favorite rods that I have. I am looking to get some more, but for now, this is one of the rods that I've got. This guy. This is my bait casting rod. This is the Shimano Convergence series. It's a graphite rod. The writing on here, it's on this back side. There we go. So we got the writing on the back side of this rod. It's a little blurry. So again, I'm going to tell you guys what that says. Obviously it says Shimano on there. It says CVC. First three numbers is 610. It's a 6'10" rod. And then it says MHB, medium heavy bait caster. Some things you'll learn about these guys, they're not all written the same, but at least you'll be able to read these guys. First three numbers, like I said, are always going to be the length, unless you have like a 6'10" like I've got, and all three numbers is going to be the length of the rod. The other number is going to be how many pieces the rod is. And then the line weight on this guy is 10 to 20 pounds, so I can put heavier line on this than I can with my other guy. The lure weight is a ½ ounce to a whole ounce. Medium heavy power rod, which means it's going to take a little bit more weight in order to get the flex out of there, but it's an extra fast rod, which means flex is really only way up here. Doesn't flex very much. It's a graphite rod, so it's gonna have IM7. Now remember, I was telling you guys IM7, so what that means is it's gonna be lighter than the IM6, but still just as durable as an IM6. These guys, I mean, I can flex it quite a bit, but you can tell if I were to, I'm a big guy, if I were to step on this, it'd probably break. That's going to be pretty much how you read the rods here. And then this is the pistol grip I was telling you guys about. So index finger goes here. It's going to make it really good for when you're jigging. You get the full, right now I've got a Texas rig on there, but it's going to make it ideal for jigging, longer casting. I love this rod. Shout outs to my tattoo guy, Leonard. He's the one that gave me this one. Him and I were just chatting. This is before I ever had a bait casting rod, about how I wanted one. And he was kind enough to give this one to me. So major thanks to Leo for that one. And then it's got a bait casting reel. We're not talking about reels today though, just rods. So when you're shopping around, just look at those numbers. And if you're not sure, just ask one of the associates there. They should be able to walk it through and explain everything for you guys. But that's going to do it for today's video. It felt like it was a longer video. It really wasn't that long. I have a couple friends who are like, hey, I really want to take my kids, but I don't know what kind of rods they'd need. Or some people are like, man, I haven't fished in like 20 years. I want to get back to it, but I kind of forgot everything. So these tutorial series, we're going to start from square one and work all the way across. That way, through these videos, anybody watching this should have a pretty good understanding towards the end of it on how everything works, or maybe just get them motivated to, oh wow, I want to check out some more stuff about that. If you guys like the video, go ahead and let me know. Hit the thumbs up button. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification bell, that way you guys don't miss any future videos. Leave a comment below. Let me know, because I still haven't had any suggestions still no suggestion on what his name's going to be back there. So yeah, again, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, hit the notification bells, leave a comment. And also while you're in the comment section, let me know what kind of video you guys would like to see. I have a whole lot of plans, but I want to make videos for you guys. So let me know what you'd like to see, and we'll see you next time.